On January 13th, Gillette released the Best Men Can Be campaign across YouTube and television. The ad showed boys fighting, 5 men interrupting women in meetings, street harassment, and fathers repeating the phrase, "Boys will be boys." Within 48 hours, the backlash exploded. The video accumulated roughly 400,000 dislikes against around 200,000 likes, making it one of the most disliked major brand advertisements on YouTube at the time. The hashtag Boycott Gillette trended globally. Customers uploaded videos throwing razors into trash bins. British broadcaster Piers Morgan publicly condemned the campaign, calling it virtue signaling and accusing the company of attacking masculinity itself. But behind the outrage was a far bigger story unfolding inside the company. Because the numbers were already turning against Gillette long before the advertisement appeared. By 2018, the company's global razor market share had fallen from nearly 70% during its peak years to roughly 54 to 60%, depending on the market being measured. Revenue inside Procter & Gamble's grooming division had already been declining for years. Younger consumers were shaving less frequently. Subscription startups were quietly taking market share. And consumers increasingly questioned why razor cartridges cost over $20 when cheaper alternatives existed online. The advertisement did not create these problems. It exposed them. Then came the moment Wall Street could no longer ignore. Just 6 months later, Procter & Gamble announced an $8 billion write-down tied largely to Gillette's business. Suddenly, the conversation changed. Was this really about one controversial ad? Or had one of the most dominant consumer brands in history already started collapsing long before the internet noticed? To understand how Gillette lost billions, you first have to understand how powerful the company once was. Gillette did not just dominate shaving. It defined it, founded in 1901 by King Camp Gillette. The company revolutionized grooming with the safety razor, a simple invention that replaced dangerous straight razors requiring constant sharpening. But the real genius was the business model: cheap handles, expensive disposable blades. Today, it is called the razor and blades model, but Gillette perfected it decades before the term existed. During World War I, the US military issued millions of Gillette razors to soldiers overseas. When those soldiers returned home, they brought shaving habits with them. Gillette had effectively embedded itself into everyday male routine on a national scale. Over the next century, the company transformed shaving into identity marketing. Its advertisements featured elite athletes, polished executives, and masculine confidence. In 1989, Gillette launched one of the most recognizable slogans in advertising history: "The best a man can get," and consumers bought into it completely. By the early 2000s, Gillette controlled roughly 70% of the global razor market. Its blade cartridges sold at premiums nearly 30 to 35% higher than competitors, yet consumers kept paying. That level of dominance attracted attention. In 2005, Procter & Gamble acquired Gillette for approximately $57 billion, the largest acquisition in the company's history at the time. On paper, the logic looked perfect. Gillette generated billions annually and appeared protected by brand loyalty, recurring purchases, and global scale. But beneath the surface, consumer behavior was already beginning to change. By the late 2000s and early 2010s, beards became fashionable again. Younger men shaved less frequently. Online shopping weakened retail. Dominance consumers became increasingly price-sensitive, and yet Gillette continued moving further into premium pricing: more blades, more expensive cartridges, more luxury positioning. At first, it looked like innovation. Eventually, it started looking like overpricing. And once consumers begin questioning value, brand loyalty starts becoming fragile. The first serious threat to Gillette did not come from another corporate giant. It came from startups. Smaller companies with almost no retail presence, fewer resources, and no legacy systems slowing them down. But they understood something Gillette underestimated. The internet had permanently changed consumer expectations. In 2011, Dollar Shave Club launched with a brutally simple idea: affordable razors delivered directly to consumers through subscriptions. Then came the viral moment. In 2012, founder Michael Dubin released a low-budget YouTube commercial titled "Our Blades Are Great." The video combined humor, simplicity, and anti-corporate messaging. It exploded online. Within roughly 48 hours, the company reportedly received over 12,000 orders, enough to temporarily crash its website. The pitch was devastatingly effective. Why pay $25 for replacement cartridges locked behind plastic cases in supermarkets when cheaper blades could arrive at your door for a few dollars a month? Then came another challenger. In 2013, Harry's entered the market with cleaner branding, modern design, and lower prices. These companies did not try to outspend Gillette. They repositioned shaving itself. Gillette looked corporate. The startups looked modern. And younger consumers noticed immediately. Meanwhile, the numbers inside the shaving industry were becoming increasingly concerning. By 2018, Gillette's market share had fallen significantly. Manual razor sales in the US declined roughly 5% year-over-year. Men's average weekly shaving frequency reportedly dropped from around 3.7 times per week to closer to 3.2. The industry itself was shrinking. But here's the cold hard truth. Gillette's biggest problem was not the controversial ad. It was that consumers were already leaving before the campaign ever launched. And worse still, Gillette responded by cutting prices, reducing blade prices by roughly 12% in 2017, only to discover something painful. Lower pricing did not stop the decline. It simply reduced profit margins on products consumers increasingly wanted less often. That is when the problem stopped being temporary and became structural. By 2018, corporate activism had become a marketing strategy. Five brands were no longer just selling products, they were selling values. Nike launched its controversial Colin Kaepernick campaign. Patagonia openly challenged political policies. And research firms reported that younger consumers increasingly preferred socially responsible brands. From a strategic perspective, Gillette's leadership believed they had found an opportunity. The Me Too movement had triggered global conversations about masculinity and male behavior. As one of the world's largest men's brands, Gillette believed it could reposition itself for a younger generation. So they made a radical decision. Instead of selling razors, they would attempt to redefine masculinity itself. The campaign flipped the company's famous slogan from "the best a man can get" to "the best men can be." The advertisement featured actor Terry Crews speaking about accountability between men. It showed bullying, harassment, and toxic behavior before transitioning into scenes of fathers guiding sons toward better behavior. Cinematically, it was powerful. Strategically, it was explosive. And this is where everything changed. For many viewers, the problem was not the message itself, it was the tone. The ad spent much of its runtime showing men behaving badly before ending with positive examples. To critics, the campaign felt less like inspiration and more like accusation. A razor company that had spent decades celebrating aggressive masculinity through sports sponsorships and hyper-masculine branding was now criticizing those same behaviors. To many people, this looked hypocritical, and timing made everything worse, because by 2019, Gillette was already losing relevance with younger consumers while frustrating older consumers with pricing and brand positioning. The campaign was supposed to modernize the company. Instead, it intensified a growing identity crisis already happening underneath the business. The backlash did not happen in isolation. It collided with a market already turning against Gillette. By 2019, the company was fighting pressure from almost every direction simultaneously. Subscription brands continued undercutting prices. Amazon weakened traditional retail dominance. Direct-to-consumer companies built loyal audiences online without billion-dollar advertising budgets. At the same time, shaving habits kept changing. Beard culture had become mainstream. Younger consumers shaved less frequently. And the overall razor category was slowing down. For a company built around recurring blade purchases, this was dangerous. Because fewer shaves meant fewer cartridge replacements. And consumers increasingly questioned whether premium razor technology justified premium pricing at all. 5 blades, vibration systems, luxury handles, heated razors. At some point, innovation started feeling excessive. Meanwhile, competitors positioned themselves differently. Harry's emphasized simplicity and affordability. Dollar Shave Club focused on convenience and humor. Even traditional rival Schick benefited as frustrated consumers began experimenting with alternatives. And the numbers reflected it. By fiscal 2019, Procter & Gamble's grooming segment sales reportedly declined from roughly $6.5 billion to about $6.2 billion, a drop of approximately $352 million. 5 in a single year. That was not internet outrage anymore. That was measurable business decline. But perhaps the most brutal reality was this: attention did not convert into purchases. The campaign generated millions of views, headlines, and online discussions. Brand mentions surged across social media within 24 hours, but awareness alone could not solve Gillette's deeper problem. Consumers were questioning value itself, and once customers stop believing a product deserves its premium pricing, marketing becomes significantly less powerful. Then came the number that shocked Wall Street. In mid-2019, Procter & Gamble announced an $8 billion write-down connected largely to Gillette's business, with some estimates placing total losses closer to $9 billion after adjustments. The market reaction was immediate. Because write-downs of this size are not normal, they signal that a company's future expectations have fundamentally changed. Officially, Procter & Gamble blamed multiple factors. Foreign exchange pressures increased competition, declining shaving frequency, structural changes in the market, but publicly, the timing became impossible to ignore. 6 months after the most controversial campaign in Gillette's history, $5 billion in brand value had disappeared. Investors started asking difficult questions. Had Gillette permanently damaged customer trust? Could premium razor pricing still survive in a digital economy? Was the brand still culturally relevant to younger consumers? Meanwhile, competitors continued gaining momentum. In 2016, Unilever acquired Dollar Shave Club for roughly $1 billion, proving subscription razor startups were no longer niche businesses. And internally, Gillette's market share continued eroding. The once dominant giant that controlled nearly 70% of the global market had fallen closer to just above 60% in some categories by the late 2010s. For decades, Gillette had relied on 3 major advantages: premium branding, retail dominance, consumer habit. Now, all 3 were weakening simultaneously. And perhaps the most dangerous part was perception, because once consumers begin viewing a brand as outdated, overpriced, or disconnected, Part 5 recovery becomes extremely difficult. The controversy dominated headlines, but the financial write-down revealed the deeper truth. Gillette's biggest problem was not outrage, it was irrelevance. At first glance, the explanation seemed simple: Gillette became too political. But that explanation misses the deeper business failure. The campaign itself did not destroy Gillette. It exposed weaknesses that had already existed for years. Gillette's business model was built for a different era, one where consumers trusted giant corporations, depended heavily on physical retail stores, and accepted premium pricing without endless online comparison. That world no longer existed. Modern consumers wanted convenience, transparency, affordability, authenticity. Competitors adapted faster because they were built specifically for the 5 internet age. Dollar Shave Club understood subscription convenience. Harry's understood minimalist branding. Amazon understood frictionless purchasing. Gillette, meanwhile, still operated like a 20th century giant, attempting to manage a 21st century audience. And this is where the company made its most dangerous mistake. It confused cultural relevance with product relevance. That distinction matters enormously. Companies like Nike succeeded with activism because sneakers are public identity products. People wear them socially. They express personality and status. Razors are different. They are private utility products. Most consumers do not want ideological alignment from a shaving cartridge. They want affordability, convenience, and performance. But Gillette targeted emotional positioning while consumers were increasingly focused on economic value. And the research exposed the problem clearly. Some surveys showed viewers responded positively to the campaign emotionally, but far fewer said it actually made them more likely to purchase. Gillette products. That is the cold hard truth many campaigns ignore. Attention is not loyalty, views are not revenue, and cultural conversation is not market recovery. Gillette generated massive awareness, but awareness did not convert into trust. And without trust, premium pricing becomes extremely difficult to sustain. Gillette's story is not simply about a controversial advertisement. It is about what happens when a market leader mistakes recognition for permanent relevance. For over a century, the company operated from a position of dominance. Gillette had scale, distribution, brand recognition, and enormous pricing power. But markets evolve, consumer habits changed faster than the company adapted. The internet weakened traditional advertising. Startups changed expectations around pricing and convenience, and social media transformed every campaign into a potential cultural battlefield. Slowly, the foundation underneath the brand began eroding. Then one campaign exposed everything at once. The controversial advertisement did not create Gillette's collapse. It revealed it publicly. And perhaps that is the most important lesson in this entire story. Corporate decline rarely happens overnight. It begins quietly. Small market share losses, shifting consumer habits, customers questioning value, competitors gaining momentum 1 percentage point at a time. Until eventually, the damage becomes impossible to hide. The $8 to $9 billion loss was not simply the cost of one advertisement. It was the accumulated cost of years spent misreading the modern consumer, years spent believing brand loyalty was permanent, years spent underestimating digital competitors, years spent assuming customers would continue paying premium prices simply because they always had. But loyalty is never guaranteed, especially in the digital era. Today, consumers have endless alternatives, instant price comparison, and almost no switching costs. The companies that survive are not always the biggest. They are the fastest to adapt, and Gillette forgot one dangerous truth. Customers can disagree with a brand, but they can also leave it.